Hey, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartery back with you today with another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I am very honored and very humbled to welcome a very, very special guest to the show who will be sharing some wonderful tips with you about mindfulness, meditation, peacefulness. We'll find out how he defines that in just a moment. But today's guest, Brother Freedom, internationally recognized mindfulness teacher, obviously former monk. I guess that's the correct terminology because you've stepped away from the monastery now, but still living by the monastic traditions. A student, I don't know if I'll say this right either, but Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Vietnamese Buddhist teacher who really needs no introduction from me, although I will say that his books have had a profound impact on my life, truthfully. So to mention that, and today we'll be finding out about the pragmatic methods of stillness, and we'll be finding out about this incredible man's life journey, because as well as the meditation, I'm talking about you in third person here, which always feels a little bit weird. But you've taught all around the world, obviously being the former acting abbot of the Deer Park Monastery in San Diego. Obviously, the art of living freely. You also term this AIM, applied impact mindfulness, OWL, organizational wisdom leadership. I love some of the acronyms, and I love how you're putting this together in a very pragmatic way, because as we were saying just now, some people look at monks or spiritual teachers in general as being on a pedestal, but you are wonderfully accessible. And I must say, what an honor and a pleasure it is to speak with you today, my friend. So before we get into anything else,
Thank
very much for making the time for this. Thank you.
I am humbled. I'm honored and pleased to be speaking to you, Liam. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. As I've said, your journey is very inspirational, remarkable, your life journey that is, and obviously your teachings are as well. And we will talk about those things, including the institutions that you've taught with as well, which I should have mentioned, Google, Meta, there's a long list there I have. We'll come to that later. But before we do, I would like to touch on briefly the time in your life where your life was taking a turn in a different direction. Now that's all I'll say because I wasn't there, you were there, so you know what happened. But I feel that if you'd like to go further back, we can obviously, but I feel that's a good point to start with, only because so many people will relate with that feeling of maybe being a little bit lost, maybe looking for something a little bit different, usually looking outside of ourselves, which I'm sure we'll come to isn't always the right way. But at the time where your life took a little turn for, I say a little turn, it was bigger later, wasn't it? But that those first steps into spirituality, how did that happen for you, please, my friend?
Mhm. Thank you. This is a question, of course, I've been asked many times in the monastery when we have guests coming. Everybody is interested because that's a matter of the heart, and everybody's feeling and sensing and experiencing something. And they ask, like, how did you get into the monastery? And I said, you want the long or the short version? And most of the Americans would say, give me the short one first, and then we go from there. And I say suffering, suffering is the answer to all the questions. And necessity is, how do you say, like the handmaid of genius, right? So when you really suffer, you look around everywhere. And that was the moment where life found me suffering, and I responded first time to that call. Because usually when you don't suffer enough, you try to stay within your habits, within your world, within that, that functions. But in a moment, and for me, I was lovesick. I was left by a partner and I was not used to it. I was always leaving my partners. And so she left me and I just didn't get it. And it broke me. I just broke. And I couldn't understand. And I tried to win her back. And I was convinced she would, but she wouldn't. And there were so many new things I had to learn that I didn't do it consciously, but everything fell apart within and without. And that's when I was so vulnerably open that I saw myself in every little thing. And for me, the journey started in such a condition when I was walking more or less unconsciously, like in that pain I was feeling, in this big suffering of the loss and no ability to fix it. Walking through town and finding, basically just passing by a bookshop and looking while walking into the window. And there was this one book cover with the one face of this one man who turned out to be Thich Nhat Hanh. And we locked eyes and I couldn't walk anymore. I had to turn around and stare him in the eyes. And then a voice in my head said, reading the title, which was translated Times of Mindfulness, Times of Awareness. And this voice in my head says, this is what you need right now. In this, like how this inner voice talks to you sometimes, like very softly and compassionately, and you better listen now. So I listened because I was just caught by it. I went in and bought the book. The lady said, the book in the window is the last one. I said, perfect. That's the one that looked at me. This is the one I have the connection with. And going home, reading the book, it was looking into a mirror. It was giving me all the answers I knew someone in this wide world would have, but I never met such a person. And here, as if he wrote the book just for me. So of course I wanted to try all of these practices, this walking meditation, this breathing meditation, the washing your dishes meditation. And I had a single household. I had a lot of dishes waiting for me, actually. So I started right away doing all these mindfulness practices, this practical. I was looking for something practical that I can engage with, that I can apply in my life and don't have to set time, an hour sitting, an hour doing deep relaxation, body scanning. I want to live and be mindful. And here it was like a workbook more than a spiritual book. And that's when I got interested, read more books, of course, and I wanted to see the place. A few months later, I was in southern France and visited the place. And then the wish came up to live there, to do this.
Mark, absolutely. As I said, so many people will relate with that feeling because it's something that most of us in the world we felt that. But as the answer came to you at the right time, I've personally experienced that as well, and it's something you can hear with words, but as you've said, it's something you have to feel really, which I am mindful of with everything we talk about today. It's all an experience, but we will put it into words as best we can. And I suppose
Yes.
this is a fairly obvious question for you. I'm sure people ask you a lot, but the decision to actually enter the monastic life, to actually renounce the worldly things that we're all taught we should strive for, and I say that very broadly because there's different schools of thought on that, but I only say that because a lot of these things we're taught to be are not always authentically us. It's something I feel very much. But anyway, your decision to enter the monastic life, it's a big decision. And I know we were talking about this before we started recording, but it's not an easy decision from a certain perspective. But how was it for you? Can you share with us a little bit about what was happening in your life at that time? Because this is a few steps forward, I'd imagine, from finding the book, and what inspired you to actually do that, really.
Great you're asking, because I thought I have to clarify that too. Because this was a decision, a very personal decision. Not everybody will have to, after breaking up, with a loved one or after suffering, will have to enter the monastery. So this is very personal. And often when asked the question, what brought you to the monastery? And I'm telling my little story, and people say, but not everybody can be a monk. And I said, God, no, please, like not everybody can be a monk. And also it's not like that you decide to become a monk and then you are a monk. We had many young men, elder men coming to the monastery, and for them just to find out it's not the life they are made for. They want to live, this seclusion, also living in community. It's not easy. So for me personally, I had three aspirations. Like I had a very good life. I was successful in my job. I had friends. I had a season ticket for my favorite football club. I had partners coming and going, but that was not always my happiness. That was often my suffering too. But so I learned that having a lot is not making me happier. So I was looking for simplicity, for a simple life, more fulfilling life. Then I found I want to do something meaningful. What I do during the day, what I engage with. And meaning is a big word. I want to be fulfilled again, doing what I'm doing. And I want to report to myself back at the end of the day that I'm happy. And the third aspiration was to do it with others, to do it in a community, do it and live and be with like-minded people who have maybe the same aspirations or similar ones. So it was really simplicity, it was meaning, and it was community. And then there is not much more. Either go to a eco community, or to a hippie community. But I also had the wish for a serious, profound teacher. And here in Plum Village, I had like this profound, wise, the father of mindfulness, as we call him in the West, together with a Buddhist monastic community that is allowed to play instruments, to play basketball, football, frisbee, where monks and nuns can go together on hikes, go on outings together, sleep in different dorms, but they can play and interact. So Thich Nhat Hanh's wish he was a good friend with Martin Luther King, right? This beloved community, this living community made true, it is still really attractive to especially Westerners. So this was one. And you said I may go back a little bit. I had from my mother's side a lot of monastics. We had Franciscans. So I'm raised Catholic. We had a lot of Franciscan monks, priests. We had one archbishop in our line. So I would say there is something implanted in my DNA, looking maybe for these values like simplicity, meaning, and community. It's genetically in there somewhere.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know that actually about the family history, but that's interesting to hear about as well. And what a wonderful transition, description of the transition, very eloquent. I mean, I'm always aware with these things, there's a lot more to the experience, and you're very much giving an overview of this. But at the same time, as you say, not everyone has to become a monk, but it illustrates following your heart. It illustrates listening to that inner voice in your way. And for someone else, it might be something else. But one of the things I really like about that, as I've already said, is your authenticity, your truth, your decision to do this purely from not what anyone else was saying, but from inside. It's a wonderful thing. And I have to ask on a sort of lighter note with that. I mean, when you say about your friends and family and things, I'm just a little bit curious, not to go off on a tangent, but what is the reaction of people when you make a decision as big as that?
They can't understand what you're doing. They think you completely lost your mind, except of very close ones, like my sister, my parents, and one of my cousin. They had my back from moment one. Everybody else is so fixated on security, safety, and wealth and continuation of what is, that they cannot even imagine why you would sell everything and give everything away. Although they got my 300 PlayStation games I just gave away to a friend. And she was very happy, but she said, I take it, but you're completely nuts. And that's how I felt sometimes when I came back from the flea markets. The pockets full of money, the apartment completely empty. I couldn't see myself anymore. So I knew what they're talking about, what I'm giving up. I was giving up my identity. I was giving up everything I was paying for to be that person, to be the one with the watches, with the guitars, with the signed football jerseys, to have all this. This was me. Everybody identified me. This is Michael. And then everything was gone. And then I came home one night and I believed what everybody said. I said, oh my God, you're running your own bankruptcy. Look at you. Everybody was warning you. And here you are, like you even hear the echo. There's nothing in here anymore, just a mattress and the curtains. And I had a breakdown. I had a meltdown. I thought, you did the wrong decision. You're following your heart. What a fool. You should follow your head. And everything came back, this old way of thinking. So it's very hard to go against that stream of thinking, of societal thinking, even of my friends who know me for very long, my colleagues, parts of my family. And to trust, to go into the unknown, to be vulnerable. This is what it is about, to delete the programming inside and allow yourself to fall apart, just like a caterpillar, to fall apart into a stinky, gooey mess, to be reformed into something beautiful, a butterfly that doesn't even remember anymore the suffering it went through, but just flies away. It was not like a fairy tale like this, but I guess I became a butterfly.
Well, yes, I would say so. Having met you the first time today, sitting in your presence now, hand on heart, it does feel like that. But this is my reason for asking you this because it's not so easy in the beginning by any means. And I do think some people have that perception of the monastic life of not so much glamorousness, but just the peacefulness and the simplicity. But obviously, there's a lot of hardships as well as you will know better than I. If that's the right word, rigors is the word that comes to mind. But in other words, it's a long process. Now, it's quite a big question for you, but I have to ask it because your teacher, as I've said already, is somebody personally I've followed and seen so many videos. I've got a stack of books like this from him, bigger than that, more like this, downstairs and everything. And it's one thing reading somebody's words and listening to them, which is very nice. And on social media, I share some of his things, but it's interesting because you were actually in his presence. You were actually learning from him and spoke with him and so many things. And with this, I was thinking about this actually before we spoke, and I thought, I'm not sure specifically what to ask. So I thought, at the end of the day, I'll just ask you what it was like learning from somebody as wise and as beautiful as that. And I say that not meaning physically, but meaning the internal feeling. If you can feel that from listening to a video of him, what it must have been like in his presence from your point of view is on a whole other level, if you understand the connection I'm making there. And I'd like to talk about that. And if it's too big a question to answer, I understand, but the ways that he helped you and your relationship and transformation. Maybe if we can distill a little bit of that down, that would be wonderful to hear about it in your own words. But it is also a very big topic that encompassed probably a long time. So it might be difficult to distill down as well. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
part of
You
the
want to hear the long or the short version, is the
Oh,
question. I
with
think
that,
we go for the short one.
I don't know. I don't mind the long version with this. I
No,
must.
no, it's a big question, as you say.
It is.
But Thai, as we call Thich Nhat Hanh, which is Vietnamese for teacher, we just called him Thai. So allow me to do that here too. He is very Zen. He's very straightforward, and he has and radiates an equanimity and a peace around him. It's nearly hypnotic, You step into his hut, he always invited all the monastics, if we have questions, if we need to know something, to come to him. And he was always open and ready for us. But mostly, once you stepped into his presence, you forgot what you came for. And he wouldn't talk much. He would just invite you in stillness for a tea, and you would drink tea together. And I would say, dang, what was my question? I have no questions. Everything is so perfectly imperfect, you know? Now it's embarrassing. I'm sitting here, I don't even have a question. Sometimes I would ask a question and then he would say, let's just listen to the sound of the birds. I said, oh, did I say something wrong? Doesn't he want to talk to me? It was only later when I realized that he was always bringing me back, and not me only, but all of us. He was so strong, and let me say is still strong because he lives in all of his disciples and students. He planted that seed of stability, solidity, straightforwardness, of Zen, of this present moment awareness in us, not allowing us to worry into the future, to regret the past, but always bringing us back to, for example, the sound of the birds, or hear that rustling of the leaves when the breeze is brushing through. And he would use this poetic language, and he was spellbound, in his presence. And learning this directly leaves a footprint in your heart, in your soul. And although your ego and your left brain rebels and wants to plan a little and wants to regret a little and wants to get out of this moment, at one point you can't anymore. You can't anymore. I have a beautiful story. We're in New York City, a couple of us monks, for an event, and we were just walking down Broadway there at Union Square when somebody from the other side of the street shouted over, "You're students of Thich Nhat Hanh." I said, "That's crazy." "Yes, we are. How do you know?" And he said, "I see the way you walk." Can you imagine? The way we were walking, he could tell that we are students of Thich Nhat Hanh. And this was the greatest compliment he could give us as students of this beautiful master. That, I said, I have Franciscan roots, and St. Francis said, preach the Gospels wherever you go. And if necessary, use words. And I wanted to turn it around into my teacher and said, teach the Dharma, or teach mindfulness wherever you go, and if necessary, use words. So if you can teach simply by walking, simply by doing this, what you're doing in this moment, not setting apart time, but that what you're doing to do it from the source of awareness, the source of this here and now, that there is, like our teacher had, a radiating of equanimity, I invented a new word for mindfulness, because this is not describing, and everybody is like selling it in another way. I call it now mindful fillness. If you feel mindful filled in that moment, then you're doing it right. Then you are in the center of yourself and you're acting from inside out. You're loving from inside out. You're caring from inside out. And you're connected with inside and out. So that was a beautiful encounter then in the middle of New York City, downtown.
It's wonderful. I mean, to be honest with you, I can understand entirely what that man meant, because even though I haven't seen you walking, as I said earlier, when I sat down with you and you can feel the radiance of that stillness, I really meant that when I was saying that. And when I sort of said, oh, we could just sit here, and because I had the same thing just then, I forgot, oh, yes, we need to do a talk now, because you could just feel it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But it really is, I will say this, it really is an honor to hear about your teacher's life directly, because obviously I never had the chance to meet him, and you might find this funny as well, but I actually heard of your work and everything you do, teaching and the different organizations first. And then when I looked into you, I found out you were a student of his later, if that makes sense. So it didn't come that way around. It came, I heard about you teaching, and then obviously I had this stack of books, and I thought, wow, there's something coming together here, a connection. So that's just a little something, so I don't forget to mention it. So obviously during this time of learning from him, I'm curious to ask you, what would be one thing that people maybe don't know or don't expect about the monastic life if they haven't been there, because it's
Oh,
like, for
yes.
example, I haven't been there. I mean, I sit and meditate in my home or in peaceful natural places, and as you say, it starts to come into every aspect of your life, from his books actually and talks, my relationship with my family and with friends and everything started slowly becoming more present. And the difference was, I just wanted to tell you this from, when I was young and time seemed to go really fast and you always had to be on to the next achievement, or the next big thing. And I would do something and feel great. And then after a week or so, it's gone. You think, oh, I have to do something else. And all of that stuff melted away. And I'm still learning. I'm not saying I've got it, but the profound effect from a book or from a talk that had, I've never had with any other um, book or talk or anything like that. And I wanted to tell you that it's not a question. I just wanted to tell you so I don't forget. But anyway, going back to the monastic life, yes, people have a perception of what it's like. Obviously, it must be very different. But if there were maybe one or two things that stand out to you as being unknown, or things people don't realize, or things people may not know when they're getting into it. I was thinking that when you were getting into this, did you know what you were letting yourself in for? I mean, it's a wonderful journey, but some of the tougher aspects, maybe not. So, anyway, in your own words, I think that would be a very interesting
Mhm.
topic for people. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can boil that down too. It's very obvious. I think many of us had like similar aspirations as I did, the simplicity and the meaning, which comes true when you seclude into a monastery. You have a daily schedule. You have obviously a lot of meditations and periods of silence. But what many, if not all of us, underestimate is the community aspect. As much as we want to live in community, we underestimate the impact it has on us in the world. And I'm talking now about Western young men and women who ordain in a still into an Asian order, into an Asian influenced culture, Buddhism as their religion, as their philosophy since thousands of years. And of course, having the fragrance of Asian culture, or in my case, Vietnamese culture. One thing that was very important to Tay was that the community aspect. So we lived together in rooms up to 4, from between 2 and 4 monks lived in one room. That alone is a big step from coming from your own apartment, being able to retreat at any given time, being with yourself, to live with these 4 other men, some of them messy, some of them nerdy, some of them with OCD, and then different personalities, different ages, different cultural background. There are so many differences from these men, and this is exactly what he intended, because he said we need that friction, and a community is a pot of boiling dirty potatoes, and while boiling, and the friction will clean them, and this is why we live together in rooms. So this is something people only realize when they enter the monastery, that they need more space. And then you see everybody going out into the woods. And luckily, all the practice centers were out in nature. So nobody could find you in the room. You knew already, like, okay, he's suffering, he needs space. And this is something you learn with the years, because you also don't know at the beginning how to communicate your suffering, or how you communicate if I'm a nerd and I'm living with a slob in a room, How do I communicate my needs? How do I can generate compassion for him, or curiosity, and ask him about his life so I can understand maybe parts of his life, what made him a slob, or why? Not just for me. It's not changing the other person, it's changing my attitude and perspective. You talked about perceptions. Thich says that 99% of perceptions are wrong, because we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are, and we want to project it on everyone. So this community life is a beautiful thing, living together 24/7, practicing meditation and mindfulness 24/7. But then the other thing is, like you have elder brothers in the order who ordained before you, but they are actually physically younger than you. So now you have this teenage boy who is already a Dharma teacher because he ordained when he was 11, and you step into the monastery and you're 40 and he's 25 and he's your mentor and he's giving you classes. And many of us have deep inside, not even obviously, you can accept that very easily, but also these mentors, they guide you. And they also limit your freedom because they said, this is what you just said is not okay, or this what you did there, you cannot do this. And if you want to go out to town, you have to ask my permission. And I decide if today is a good day for you, or if you're too unstable, or if you're too driven by your desires or greed. And often you would say, can I go to the pharmacy with this brother? And he would say, no. And you would say all the bad words I could remember, in my head. And I said, okay, thank you, teacher. You have to bow in front of him and say thank you, and then turn around and tell the other you can't go to town. And this is like damaging your ego, and this is exactly what is intended. So having teachers who are actually physically younger is not common in our society, right? That's a challenge too, which broke many. So first thing that made many brothers and sisters leave is that community life was too tight. And the other one was they could not accept, or overcome their ego, saying, no, I know better. But it's the same like with the suffering, as I said before, you have to let go of everything. You have to break down, melt down to rebuild yourself, to reinvent yourself. And what never dies is your personality. What never dies is your spirit. What never dies is you, basically. You will always be you, the one you have been as a child, with this enthusiasm, with your curiosity, with your melancholy, depending on what personality you are. You will always stay that. You don't have to fear that you will lose any of that. But stepping into a monastic life means exactly that you change everything else but the core. And that's hard.
Yes, it is. And it's interesting because not to go off on a tangent, but what you were saying earlier about your apartment and giving so many things away, I went through that moving here when I left Wales and came to Cyprus. I took a few things with me because obviously it's not totally monastic, but I stripped a lot of things away. And what you were saying about the flea markets and things, and I remember going through a very similar experience in that aspect in a different way. But the friction is a wonderful message because I really think that I mean I didn't know that about your experience in the monastery, but I really think that when people get closer to each other, they do learn more. If you meet anybody who has an issue with something, with black people or gay people or a misogynist with women or any type of thing, and you speak to them and you say, well, okay, but how many of those people do you know of that whatever supposed group it is? And they usually say none. And you say, well, okay, how do you know that you feel that way if you've not spent a lot of time with them? When you have a friend who is, I suppose, I mean, I don't believe in labels, but just for the purposes of what we're talking about, and any of those feelings that you could have melt away. So it's actually a very, very, very profound what you said about the potatoes, and I will remember that because I've observed the same phenomenon. Anyway, so that's a little bit of an overview of the monastic life. I'm sure there's a lot more we could go into. It's fascinating. I mean, barely scratched the surface, but as I've said, it's an overview, and as you said, sometimes we have to use words, and this experience is in that context. But one of the things, and this may skip forward in time a little bit now, but I'm curious, is obviously then you've taken these teachings around the world. You've taken them to, well, all of these organizations that you've taught at, which there's an extensive list I actually have here. You've impacted a lot of people's lives in a positive way, I would say, by well, even by just sitting with you, I can feel it, as I've already said. So never mind talking with people. And I'd like to move forward a little bit into that time because a lot of people have the misconception that these practices are very passive, whereas obviously if you look at well, even if you look at Tay, if I may use the same name, obviously all of the things he accomplished with 100 books and the Vietnamese War and Martin Luther King and incredible. I don't know if to use the word impact, but it's the only thing I can think that does it justice. Touched a lot of lives basically, and now you're doing the same. And obviously, some people stay within the monastery. That's wonderful, and you made the decision to then bring some of this wisdom forth. And I keep using the word wisdom, and I keep thinking, well, it's more of an experience that you're bringing forth into the world, actually. But nonetheless, you decided that you wanted to do that. And I can imagine that wasn't an overnight thing. So, what was the process for you of becoming the person that people know you are now, the human monk, as we were talking about earlier, the international teacher? Again, it's a big question, and you were in the monastery for a long time, I'd imagine. But that transitional period of I want to take this to more people. Obviously, you became an abbot. What was the initial inspiration for that? I think that will also fascinate and inspire people, to be honest. Thank you.
Yeah. You said it like I'm doing the same as I did before, and I actually cannot imagine doing anything else. But what I have learned, what I was looking for, what I was longing for, what I found, and I never want to go back. I want to go forward, mindfully, but forward.
Mm.
We actually in San Diego were invited a lot from companies in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco tech companies, because in their corporate philosophy, mindfulness may it be hip or whatever, played um, it was a big thing.
Mm.
So we already started there and came by invitation to these companies to give classes and courses. One thing I did not always agree with was that there was always a part of Buddhism and Asian culture, a fragrance of that within the teachings, which these corporate people could not work with, really accept. And I said, why don't we talk in a way that the people can receive it, and apply it? But then you have that conflict and say, we are a Buddhist community and we have this Asian roots and this is the fragrance of it and you cannot take it out. So this didn't sound right to me as somebody coming from another corner. Although I also have an upbringing, as I said, a Catholic upbringing. I have a Mediterranean upbringing. I was raised in Germany. Maybe this combination makes me more free and I can put things aside and said, I don't need to be German. I don't need to be Croatian. I don't need to be Buddhist or a Catholic. I can just be a human being. So when Tai passed away 2 years ago, things also changed within the community. But first, when he passed, and I experienced that, and I heard that from many other brothers and sisters, was that in a dream or as a feeling or as a vision, I'm speaking for myself now, I received a package from him. I literally saw him, I had him in a dream coming to me. I saw him before me with this, and it was an Amazon package. Can you imagine? And he gave it to me. And I was vivid, and I knew it was a dream, and I knew about the value of this dream. And I knew this has to happen, and this is a very special moment. And he said, this is my gift to you. Here in this box is everything. That what you already brought into the order. That what I gave to you during your time. This also includes and contains what you have learned. And it includes your path, what you will continue to give and to learn. I said, wow. And he gave it to me. It was so light. And I remember being afraid there's nothing in there. And then I said, but that would be very Zen if there's nothing in there. So many of us have received this package, and it was like, go out and use your package, use your qualities. That's what he was always encouraging us. Use your skills. You have a very unique personality. Use this. Seize the day. That's what other teachers say. But know first, be mindful, be aware of your qualities, of your shortcomings, of your limitations, of your gifts, and use them, for the good of people, for all beings.
Mhm.
This was the most, again, like this inner voice, heart, soul call. And then a community changes when the teacher is changing. And what I saw in this Asian culture is that there's such a huge respect for the teacher. In my eyes, from my perspective, that we were not able to evolve anymore. While he would say, let's try this, let's do this, nobody wanted to take the responsibility and say, let's do this, or put themselves on a pedestal and kind of act as a new leader. What happened was stagnation. And I said, like, we're just simply conserving his teachings and just using the books he has written, but he will write no more books. And that was the feeling I had, that this respect for him is so immense that it actually kills the lifeblood of the teachings. So that was for me moving, and I sat with this for 1.5 years or something, because I love the community and I could have grown old there, and everything was beautiful, just as before in my life. Everything was perfect. And there I go, and people said, are you crazy again? The same story backwards. Are you crazy? How can you leave this peaceful place? You made it. You're the abbot. You're in California. You have a green card. What do you want? You're always dissatisfied. I'm not dissatisfied. I'm connected. You're indifferent. I said, I'm not indifferent. I'm equanimous. Is that answering your question? I started flowing into something. I don't know actually if you wanted to hear that.
Taking it in, yes, yes, I do, because something that fascinated me, and I knew I wouldn't find the answer anywhere unless I asked you this directly, is the fact that, well, as you said, you did leave that peaceful place. It can't have been easy. As I said to you before, coming into the monastery is a big decision, but coming out of it is a big decision. And you have that awareness that in some ways your life may never be the same, even though I understand you have the inner peace. You will always carry that. You will always carry his teachings, but the way some of these things manifest changes a lot. So I was curious to find out, why you did that. And I find it very admirable. And the fact that you've taken the teachings to, how do I say this in a polite way, the people who need them the most, really. I mean, not to be rude to anybody, but when you've seen for yourself these busy sort of corporate environments and everything, any form of presence often goes on the back burner, to say the least. Any form of, you can see people in the same room, but they're busy, they're preoccupied, they're looking at you, but they're thinking of something else. And all of these things, how many of us have tried to deal with institutions, no disrespect to them, but hospital
No,
system.
they're a community themselves. And what
Yeah.
we did is bringing mindfulness
Exactly.
and show them ways how we live as a community that lives in harmony and awareness. That what Sangha is translated, a community that lives in harmony and awareness, because we also know of the impact we made in the world.
Yes.
And the saying, little people that do little things in little places in the world change the face of the world, right? So what you do now counts most, is what the Buddha says. And companies, big corporates, small or big, they are a community. They see each other every day. They work together. They're building something. They're offering something. If they do this with awareness and harmony and understanding and support, they can flourish. But as you said, we're often just unconscious about the values and qualities we possess,
Yes.
that are innate to us, and we underestimate the abundance of it, that we can just give it away and it will never die out. It will always, it's like a ever bubble. And this is what we brought there. And my personal joy was the openness of the corporate world, the openness to learn something new, but they also needed to let it in and be open and see that it works. And when it worked, they were all in, and they made new meeting structures. They made new telephone structures. We taught them how to write emails, like good emails, bad emails, but to not make them sound bad, but understanding, and from from a place of connection. And it's not difficult. We're just not used to it. And that's why companies are very grateful. And that brings, I think it's mutual. It brings me joy if I see people applying it, taking it on, are open to it, receiving it, and applying it, and enjoying it actually, and seeing the benefits of it. This makes my heart radiate. This is what I want.
Absolutely. It's wonderful because, as you said, these organizations are a community, they are connected, they are like an organism in many ways. So as you put the wisdom in there and it's spread through, that's exponential then, because it's so many people involved in that, but then each of those companies is doing something that has an impact beyond their own corporation. They're providing the service, so it goes out and out. And people say about the ripple effect or these phrases, but in other words, that I keep going to say wisdom, and I keep actually saying it's not. It's an experience. When I talk with you, and sit with you, it's an experience. So you're giving that experience of peacefulness to them, and it obviously it goes out and out, and it's a wonderful thing. I'm glad that you mentioned how you feel when you see people applying these things, because that was actually a question I had for you. Is people look at the teacher and the student, and they look at it from a very linear perspective. But the joy that it must give you to see people finding more peace, finding more harmony, finding these things within their own lives. Obviously, we were talking on an organizational level, also on an individual level, whichever form it takes. And you know that you've helped them to do that. Obviously, they are doing it, but you're helping them to do it. And through that, you're also continuing Tay's experience that came to you, that then comes from you to them, and so forth. Um, how does it feel, and how do you effectively measure that? I guess. I mean, this is one of those questions that's kind of. I thought it might come up. I wasn't sure, but I'm definitely feeling the movement in that direction of, how would you describe that experience? Because I believe that this kind of service is the highest aspiration in life, really. I'm going to come out and say that even when I do these talks, I hope that it's an act of service to people so that they can learn and they can at least appreciate a different perspective. What they do from there is up to them. So when you're living this life of contribution to so many people, how does it feel? Can we go a little bit deeper into the joy it gives you, and can we go a little bit deeper into how you um I suppose how you measure that, or how you notice the effect of entire corporations changing their view, if that makes sense with what I'm going here. Thank you.
It's very simple. I just feel like everyone else who has a happy moment, who has a blissful moment, who feels connected to yourself, and the feeling of gratitude of having contributed to making somebody else's life more beautiful, or to hand a gift to a birthday child, or to a wedding couple, and see, or a lollipop to a child, and see the smile in their face, to see their eyes radiating. This is a very human, universal, basic human need to contribute to each other's happiness. And we experience that in family or in relationships. It's just to dare to expand that. First of all, expand it inwardly and offer it to myself, because often we know how to be nice and compassionate with other people, but we are hard on ourselves. This is where the practice always starts, to do the journey within. And I said, it's just like watching TV. I don't watch TV. I have a discovery channel inside of me. And this is the most interesting channel you can watch. And it's 24/7, and there's so much to learn. So you see, with the corporates, for example, I'm not changing corporates. When people say, oh, now you're doing corporate thing, I said, I'm not changing corporates. I'm changing people. Like we talked about individual, but these individuals are working together in a team. And when I teach individuals, they are not individuals. Like, what are they individual from? They are not separated. They have an ecosystem. They have a family. They have a partner. They have friends. They're breathing the air. They're living in on the same planet as I am. They make an impact, right? And what I want to do is introduce people to themselves again. That they say, hello, I'm Michael. Hello, Liam. I want to show you yourself. And you can say, hello, Liam. And then actually Liam is responding and saying, hi, I'm so glad that we are together again. It's been a while. And this moment is the moment is a reward. This is warming my heart. If I see through whatever practice, my favorite now and my my signature technique is mindfulness, but as I said, mindfulness became a dirty word. So I have to come up with mindful stillness so people understand actually, and I cannot even be mad because when I see how many meditation and mindfulness teacher courses online on 4 weekends, 8 hours for $99 are sold, I said, what can these people know? What can they teach? You have to suffer. You have to turn inward. You have to confront, accept, embrace, hold and rock your suffering like a crying baby and be with it. Be with the stinky diapers. You have to go through that gooey mess of a caterpillar to a butterfly. You need that experience. We're talking about experiences. And when you see somebody's willing to go through it because they've gone through worse and now they know why they're going through it, because they will come close, they will connect, they will reconcile, they will rediscover, they will remember who they are. What is more beautiful than a person that found herself, found himself?
Absolutely. It's such an interesting topic, my friend, because as we've been talking, I was thinking of this a little bit. It came into my mind a few times of you've experienced the inner peace, and now you have a lot of what people would say is success. You've had a lot of success in the world. But that's why I was so fascinated to ask you that, because in a way that reshapes the definition of what people may call success, and it's actually a very powerful message for a lot of people, as I mentioned previously, the way that you touch lives is beautiful, and I'm just taking that in for a moment because to be honest, I can feel from you, I can see, well, it's not really see, but I can feel, but I can see in your eyes the joy of that. And there's a lot of joy there anyway, but when you were talking about helping people in this way, it really lights up, and maybe that's a strange compliment, but that's what I was feeling, and I
Yeah,
thought of,
mindfulness is not serious. Mindfulness shall not be serious, and anyone who want to sell it to you or teach you in a way that it doesn't resonate with you for a reason, because you want to be, I choose the word enlivenment before enlightenment, because enlightenment is a distant word nobody dares to touch. We are too humble, but I want to enliven myself. So enlivenment is something everybody knows, and we generate these. I'm not carrying the teachings, I'm generating the teachings. And I have to generate mindfulness at every given moment. Otherwise, everything needs food to survive. So is the energy of peace. Yeah? All people want peace, but few there are who want the things that make for peace. So start with this,
absolutely.
right?
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Wonderful. With this as well, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a couple of other things as we move into sort of the latter phase, if you like, the last few things with these topics. For people who are just becoming aware of this, because even if I look at my own life, what you say there about the teachers and everything, there's so many courses out there. That's why I've been trying to listen to things and sort of learn it myself, because if you get caught up in a lot of things, you can get pulled in all sorts of directions. They're not necessarily authentic. And then that's why I thought, okay, I already have the podcast. If I'm using this to both learn and share with other people at the same time, then it's a wonderful thing. But um anyway, but the question going back to that is the fact that I'm drawn to this for some reason with the compassion and going back to the compassion you talked about earlier. And I like we talked about earlier, I'm not entirely sure why I'm asking, but I feel the need to ask. So there we are. When it comes to people being able to generate more compassion in a day-to-day experience, in a busy experience, as I've already said, where I've come here to Cyprus, people are, broadly speaking, I'm generalizing a little bit, but they're generally more compassionate than a lot of British people. But there's also a lot of compassionate British people. But I also feel the culture can drive people away from that if they let it. They have to make the time for compassion. If some people are hearing this for the first time, one of the biggest experiences I had, even with some of the books and also the videos actually of your teacher, because hearing his voice, there was something about that. I would cry, right? As sometimes in the beginning when um, that depth of compassion for everybody, for animals, for that gentleness that was always in me when I was a child. But as you get older, you sort of feel like you have to hide it because of the way the world is and things, and then you lose touch with it, and it's a process. And I was then bringing it back personally. Um, how would you recommend that people soften their hearts? Because I'm sitting with you now, and I'm having that same feeling. It's like a happy joy. It is a joyous feeling, but it has a tearful quality because of the level of gentleness. I mean that sincerely. And I feel that one of the things I would really like to see, um, where I grew up, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of crime there, there's a lot of things that go on in that part of Wales, a lot of drug use, and there's a lot of uncompassionate behavior, which is why I felt I personally had to hide my way of being. I now realize that was never necessary. What can people do to bring that forth? It's already innate within them, it's already there, but we have to drop the armor. How can they do that? As I've said, I don't know why I'm asking, but it feels so important. So thank you. That would be a
Mm.
wonderful topic to touch on, I think.
Yeah, I want to touch on it. You said it actually when you said like you knew that, you knew how to do it, and you were like that
Mm,
when you were a child, and you lost it because of society, and now you're refining it, right?
mm,
And I think this speaks for every one of us. We all, when we were young, we were still connected to that source, to our true self. And then with conventions, cultures, habits, etiquette, values, we become strong, we become fast, we become good and better and faster and stronger. And we have to fight. And everybody knows we learn how to use our elbows because of society. But I'm asking now back, like the same fate that happened to you and to me and to all of us was not the first one. So there were people before you who went through the same cycle, and there were people before them who went. So who is that society we're talking about? It's a little bit anonymous, but they're all consisting of people like you and me who were as a child connected, then learned. And where's the point where we can point fingers and saying the industrial revolution, the digital revolution, like war or greed, or is it happened in any tribe from the beginning of time when you read mythology. It happened all the time. So it's not our society. It's like seeds in us that somebody feels neglected, that somebody feels abandoned and believes they have to be stronger. My personal story, for example, I just talked with my mom today about it. When they give me tips and tricks about life or just their best opinion on how I shall decorate my new apartment or where I should put this or stack that. And I was saying, like, do you mean like that my ideas are not good enough, and your ideas are, no, 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 I only mean it well. I said, I know that you only, because you're my mom and my dad, but it sounds like to me, do you ever ask yourself, how does it sound to me? I know where it comes from. But if you constantly tell me, why don't you put this there? It is much more beautiful. When you stack the pots like that, you save much more space. Do you think I'm stupid? No. But this mentality of being stronger, being faster, you have to be superior to others. And those of us who are not as loud and strong, they will step back and they will accumulate hatred. Like they have also a need for expression. They know deep inside, they know they are worthy. Deep inside, they know they count, but we don't allow them. And there's a beautiful African proverb. It goes like, the neglected child will burn the village to feel its warmth. And this is the society you are talking about. If we allow people to be and don't try to tell them what to do better, faster, in our humble opinion, right? As we said, we don't see the world as it is. These souls that are maybe a little bit more shy, we give them a space, we give them a spotlight to grow, to show their uniqueness. And so when I can direct that into an answer of your question, be like that person who doesn't want to neglect anyone of your tribe, and make your tribe small. Don't look in terms of society or the planet or the world. Just go to your family, to your colleagues, to your environment, to the homeless people, to the people who shout in the streets, to those people you actually don't like, and look deeply and allow them to express themselves. And often, we know this with emotions inside, when you allow emotions to flow, they become still, because all they need is to be heard, to express themselves. You suppress them, they come back. You ignore them, they will be louder. You push them away, they push you even stronger back. Receive what is here and now. And this is by growing your heart, by growing openness, by generating mindfulness, starting with yourself, understanding what makes you feel how. I'm always saying we have this beautiful term, paying attention. Now, when you think what we say, we are paying attention, like we are paying money, for a pair of sneakers. Now, if I pay money for a pair of sneakers, you want to choose well, right? You want to compare them, and you want to know that if you pay that amount of money, they make you happy, right? Only then I will pay the money. Now, with paying attention, we are so wasteful. We're paying attention to a war here, to a presidential election there, to a dictator in a banana republic there. But we're not paying attention to my own emotions. There is climate change and volcanoes are erupting. There's a volcano erupting deep in my heart. Do I ever pay attention? You see? So attention, in fact, is a currency. And the inner peace and the equanimity and the growth is the price you pay. So when you ask yourself during your day, to whom or what am I paying, how much and how long of my attention, this is a big step towards mindful fullness, because you are choosing, you are selecting which qualities in you you will water, which seeds you will water. And these will be seeds of compassion, of listening, of connection, of being there. Simply by asking yourself, what am I paying attention to? And what does it do? Am I happy with the sneakers, Or am I just getting more and more angry, frustrated, or melancholic? Leave them in the shop. Don't watch that TV, don't listen to that person. Don't read that article. Stop that book. This is the way you are connecting with yourself, introducing yourself to yourself. And then self-dialogue starts. And he said, you don't like this? I'm curious to read this, but it makes me sad. So why don't you stop? Because I'm always reading it. He said, maybe it's enough. Self-dialogue is expression of compassion, of self-compassion. I have a few mirror meditations on my YouTube channel where I encourage people to sit in front of a mirror and just press play, and there's a self-dialogue starting to help them get started to do the same, to sit in front of a mirror and just start a conversation.
Mhm.
And miracles happen there because you meet yourself.
Wonderful. Well, I must say, my friend, that's the journey that's happening to me at the moment. That's what you're describing there. It's in progress, it's ongoing, but it is what's happening
Always.
always. And I've also had the experience on the flip side as well, where I talk to some people, and going back to what you were saying earlier about the neglect and the burning the village and so forth, it's fascinating because some people I've met in my life where other people are afraid of them, like people who've been in prison or some supposed label has been put on them. And I'll sit with them and talk with them, and they'll say to me, Liam, you don't judge me. You don't seem to have those perceptions. And one of my friends said to me a little while ago, he's actually a minister, a church minister, but he said to me, Liam, sometimes with you, it's like watching Bambi speaking to the big bad wolf, he said. And I said, to him, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you have the compassion and you're sitting there talking with people, and sometimes for them, it's the first time they've felt accepted. And because they've told me that, it's not me saying that. And I thought, okay, how do I do that? So then I sort of delved deeper into the process, but then I found out I'm not doing it enough with myself. I'm doing it with other people. So as you find answers to some questions, you have more questions. But it's a wonderful journey, and I just felt sort of compelled to ask you about compassion. The last couple of things, and we'll wrap this up shortly. But what are your thoughts on the teaching of, well, I was going to say mindfulness, but in your terminology, the teaching of these practices in schools or colleges or universities, because a lot of people are away down the path, and it's wonderful because it's never too late to develop this self-awareness. As I've had in my own life, the career and all the busyness and all the things, and changing my life now. But also, I've seen teachers going into schools and colleges and different things, and teaching this. And I think that's a wonderful additional way of sharing this with a wider audience. So like I said earlier, going into corporations, fantastic, because as I've said, it's an organism, everyone's connected to everyone else, everyone has a sort of knock-on effect, for want of a better terminology, to everyone else in there. And I think it's the same in schools. And I think that if people could share this more in schools, um, a lot of problems that generate from lack of self-awareness could actually be avoided, and people wouldn't have to go through that particular kind of suffering and come out the other side. They could maybe go on a different path. We always all have to go through some, but maybe it would take a different form. Is that something you do, or something you'd like to do in the future, or something with the youth of today, shall we say, for want of a better term?
Mhm. Thank you for mentioning this is a very important part. First and for all, I'm not a kids person. I'm not a teenager person. I cannot deal with them. I did it in children program and teen programs, but there are other. I received my package from Tay with my skills and my still shortcomings, and they are just not my circus, not my circus, not my monkeys. They are much more skilled brothers and sisters and people around who really have the vocation to be around kids. For me, it starts, I'm getting interested into people when they started to suffer and have explored suffering, maybe based on my own life, then I'm heart to heart, eye to eye. And
Mm.
there is an exchange for me that flows.
Yeah.
Often when I'm in teenage program or children program, I'm missing that. That's what
Mm.
I detect my need is for a peer-to-peer connection. But it's not only an interesting audience, as I said, it's the future audience. And when we talk about society and how society, after you becoming 5 or 6, guides you into an orbit that is based on violence and better, faster, stronger, Then mindfulness in schools, kindergarten, schools, universities, planting seeds for a society that will become more aware, more harmonious, more understanding, more supportive, and wholesome, basically. So it is elemental that mindfulness is taught. And you learn so much nonsense in school, you too, right? That you never need it again. Why not human values and quality? And we're not talking about Buddhism. We're not talking about mindfulness as it is sold on magazine covers, but to get to know you, to get to know somebody else, to know how to connect, to know how to read the subtleness of the mind, to embrace and tame wild emotions. This is empowerment, that makes you ready for life, for every situation. To recognize yourself as a living, breathing being. And talking about the corporate world that builds maybe a good framework for that in-growing society, like these kindergartens, schools, all kind of schools, university, they are filling this frame with life, and they will infiltrate the frame too, right? And in Plum Village, we did a lot. And there's Wake Up Schools. This program is called Wake Up Schools, where we especially went to schools. But now talking about the importance of teaching individuals, my sister is a teacher. So, and I'm who I am. So when she visited me, she fell in love with the practice of mindfulness. She said, I can use this in school. This is perfect. She applies mindfulness practices and she blends them with what she has learned in university, how to teach children. And she is one of the most successful, is the wrong word, but everybody says, how do you deal with this class? Nobody could tame this class and you're just playing with them. She said, they're lovely kids. What do you want? You just need to hear them. You have to give them a space to be. And then you guide them with certain techniques and practices but they don't know, to connect, to talk to one another, to be still for a moment, to enjoy an ice cream or a tangerine in mindfulness, and do fun things, not serious things, but do fun things with the kids. So teaching individuals, they go out in the world, everybody on their workplace, on the place where that's why I said they're not individuals. They are not like separated from anybody else, but they're feeding and growing the society we wished we were born and grown into. But let's be us, the ones who plant the seeds for such a society and watch them bloom. So I'll take care of the 18 plus, 20 plus, 21 plus. But there are so many who need that and who love to connect with this childish naivety and curiosity and enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful, my friend, because even as I've said, what you're doing in the corporations, they are at the pinnacle of our worldview of success. They are at the pinnacle of what they were educated to be from a societal perception. And so including them within these teachings is fantastic. And I was just curious about the schools because I've seen people teaching in all manner of places, even inside prisons or inside places where people need to hear this the most. So it's a wonderful message to close out with. Um, I think we've frozen now a moment, actually.
I'm not, or I'm
Ah,
moving.
yes, you're back now. There we are.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. It happens with the
I
connection.
never left, Liam. I never left.
I must have left for a moment. I must have left a moment. But my friend, with this, as I said at the beginning, I mean, gosh, like an hour and a half we've spoken, and even so, I think that we've only scratched the surface of this. But as I said to you at the beginning, my vision for this was sharing some stories from your life and some of the bigger picture, shall we say, of these teachings and how they can impact the world. And I just want to say that I knew this would be a wonderful talk, but it's exceeded my expectations. Honestly, it's been absolutely wonderful because, as you said at the beginning, well, teach the Dharma wherever you go, but if necessary, use words. I think that we've done a very good job, and you in particular have done a very good job of using words to share this experience and to share wisdom to such a profound degree. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's wonderful, and I really think that this will reach the right people at the right time, which is what I aim for. And if even a handful of people find out more about what you're doing, then we've done our work. But I'm sure it will be more than that. So I would just like to extend my thanks to you sincerely for everything that you shared today. It means so much to me. So thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Liam. You invited me and you opened a space to make this happen. And then we just let conditions play with each other, and we happened to be on the same frequency, and I really much enjoyed, and it was no effort at all. It was a joy to just give what's coming up. This is not my wisdom I'm selling or carrying around. It's really generated. There's another beautiful saying, God has no hands and feet but ours. So who but we, you know? We just listen and then we do. And if we can support each other and be there and create moments like this, inspire people, spark flames in hearts, let people connect, hear the inner voice, become whole, generating the need to help others in need. This is so beautiful. And everybody can feel it immediately. There's an immediacy to it, that I'm very, very happy for this opportunity. Thank you, Liam.
And I'm so happy for your presence and your time in this way. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it. And as I've already said, I've gained a lot from this personally. I have no doubt other people will. And I'll send it to you when it's finished so you can see the finished product. But for now, thank you so much once again. I wish you peace and blessings for a wonderful evening. I'm inspired to follow the work that you're doing from this point forward as well, mindfully forward, as you said. And I hope that one day we meet again, maybe even in person. We never know. But for now, thank you again so, so much, my friend. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam.
Okay. Well, you take care of yourself. Have a wonderful evening. And I'll be in touch with the finished product. We'll go from there. But thank you, my friend. Absolutely wonderful.
It's
Thank
been
you.
a joy. It's
It
been a
has.
joy. And please, if I can just give you an aspiration,
Please.
pay attention to your breathing. That was it. I just wanted to say, when you hear the recording, pay attention to your breathing. This is the most important. You don't have to watch my work, my YouTube channel, not anyone's books or videos. If you pay attention to your in-breath and your out-breath, this is the book you should read. That's the best.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.